This item is the follow-up to the March 6th, 2 weeks ago, presentation that Leanne Kimber is from Colliers, but I say is the acting executive director of Webster Economic Development in Sweden. She was here with actually Kimberly Batiste 2 weeks ago. And we described to the board the kind of out of left field reach out that we got from Empire State Development from ESD. You know, usually we apply for grants. This is unusual that a government agency like that reaches out and says, we'd like to structure this Fast New York grant for you. It's a little different. So I'm going to hand the baton off to Leanne, who, you know, you think Leanne's going to be busy 2 weeks?
I would say so. I'll drive to Webster in the last 2 weeks. Okay, well, thank you all for having me here tonight. Again, Leanne Kimber, Colliers Engineering Design, acting director of Webster Economic Development Alliance. 2 weeks ago, I came here and presented to you the map that you see on the screen, diagram of the roadways that were to be included in this Fast New York Track C infrastructure grant. Phillips Road Multimodal Trail, Orchard and Panama improvements, extension of Chiota Drive, reconstruction of Mitchell Dean Drive, and extension of Boulder Industrial Parkway. The grant was going to include all of those roadway improvements as well as the sanitary sewer upgrades that are currently in progress by the town. I'm going to scroll to the next slide. When we met last, I don't think, based on feedback we heard, we didn't hear any strong concerns from the board, but interest to hear what was going to come of the next 2 weeks. Specifically, I think our big action item was knowing that we were going to hopefully vote on a resolution tonight, that we would meet with the village and the town to discuss and prepare a list of bullet points that would serve as the content of that resolution and would be a precursor to a development agreement between WEDA and the town and WEDA and the village. So we did that. We prepared those bullets, we shared them with ESD, Empire State Development, for their feedback. They gave us some great feedback, great direction, and that's all reflected in the draft resolution you'll have with you tonight. The one thing that was new information to us in that feedback was that ESD requested that we add to this project a electrical engineering master planning study to basically study how and what infrastructure upgrades would be needed to the Xerox site and thereabouts in order to attract strategic industrial investment. So that was new information to us. We kind of went into this initially on March 4th when we had our first meeting, thinking this was a roadway project for roads that town, village, WEDA, the state, all are in agreement that need to be improved in order to spur economic development in this area. So this electrical engineering study was sort of a different ball of wax. So this is the updated budget that reflects that. There's a couple of other changes that are also reflected here, and my alignment got messed up, I think, when this moved to PDF, but you get the idea. So one change starting from the top, sanitary sewer project by the town, we've learned that that has gone from $6.3 million to $7 million. Again, that's money that's already been spent, money that we know is going to be reimbursed, but wanted to reflect that here as part of this total investment in the site. The next line item is that electrical infrastructure planning project or study in the amount of $500,000. And then this is sort of a clerical difference, not a difference in substance, but in the previous meeting we did not have the HUD grant that the village has been awarded reflected in this table, so we now added that in as that additional $500,000 at the end. So that brings the total project cost up to $17.3 million. The only change to the actual grant request is that it went from $9.3 million to $9.8 million to reflect the electrical engineering study. So I want to sort of restate that this is something that ESD has requested that we add, recognizing that, as Supervisor Flaherty puts it. We know we need the roads are the skeleton to this site. Even though this electrical engineering study is new information to us, we know that that is a study that needs to take place. Again, we know this site needs power, we know we need to figure out how it's gonna happen, and it needs to happen comprehensively. Not that we have a crystal ball, but our thinking is that, it's logical that this is looped into the same project where these transportation improvements are happening. Keep this momentum going, seize an opportunity to continue planning for this site and move it one step closer to that finish line of opening doors for new investment. So that's all kind of been litigated over and over again. Town, village, WEDA, the state have all agreed that that's something that they are interested in doing and something that they all want to see happen. So philosophically, it doesn't change anything. Financially, it changes things a little bit. So what does this mean? I'm gonna just scroll down to the things that we do know. So just kind of summarizing what I've gone over so far. This electrical engineering study is gonna involve some planning activities to bring sufficient power to support industrial development on this campus of about 200 acres, 1 million square feet existing, but that will probably increase with additional development. Some of the activities that would be included: electrical engineering, capacity studies, easements, legal work, infrastructure design. Basically, what do we need here? How would we bring it here? What would it cost? When would we do it? As I said, the cost would be about $500,000. The difference between this $500,000 and the 9.3 million that you would be applying for the roadway projects is that it's not something that can be financed with like construction financing the way you would typically do that. This is money that would have to be, I'll call it sponsored upfront by the town and village. Doesn't mean that it's not reimbursable. It would be reimbursable. It is part of the grant, but it would need to be put upfront out of pocket before being reimbursed. So it's a little bit different in kind, not a significant difference in impact, but that's something to be aware of, that the way that the money would come back to you is a little bit different. We discussed this with both the town and the village. They're both leadership at the town and village, both on board with doing this and with dividing that cost between the town and village. Exactly how that's divided, we're not sure yet, but we know that they would plan to divide it. 1% commitment fee that we talked about last time was going to be 1% of 9.3, now it would be 1% of 9.8, so that's a difference of about $5,000 that would be divided in some way between the town and village. So the commitment fee is a very minor increase, and then there's the financing piece. So things that we don't know the exact scope of this study. Once the grant's awarded, that's something that would be worked out with the town and village at the table, but including NYSEG, NYISO, and ESD to figure out exactly what needs to be included, who needs to be at the table, and how it would actually be carried out. We don't know yet whether it would be the town or the village that would actually procure that work. So one entity would have to procure it and do that study. And we don't exactly know how the money would be split yet. That's something that the town and the village would work out. We've discussed splitting it 50-50. We've discussed splitting it in some pro rata fashion, depending on the impact or potential benefit to each jurisdiction and municipality. So same as before, there's things we know, things we don't know. We don't expect that we'll know the answers to these questions in time for voting on this resolution or submitting the application, but they're things that we would work out following April 1st. So, just see if there's anything else I want to add here. I think that pretty much covers it. So, slight increase in the grant, very slight increase in the commitment fee. I know that can potentially be a financial concern. Philosophically, there are things that could be a concern to this board that we've talked about. One could be, we don't want to set a precedent that the town and village are willing to pay money for private property owners to do planning studies that are going to benefit their, private holdings. That's something we certainly recognize. that's not what's happening here. The money is, coming from the state, being passed through the town and village. And we've talked about, does that set a precedent for the town and village looking to, in the future, people are gonna come to you and ask you to do the same kind of thing. We see this as sort of a very unique situation where, the state is coming to us with a grant opportunity. And if this is something that they see as necessary and something that we all also know is necessary in order to make this site ready for investment, this seems like a good opportunity to take advantage of. The second concern, are we paying money out of pocket? The answer is no, not really. So yes, upfront, the money would have to come from the town and village, but again, it's coming from the grant and it would be reimbursed. So that's everything I prepared for tonight. If there are questions, we can discuss those now. Yeah, go ahead.
I definitely have a question.
Go ahead.
Because I'm pretty sure that as a municipality, we cannot do, I can't go and have the town or the village go pave my driveway. Just can't do it. But essentially, that's what we're doing here. And I know it's encouraged by the state, and I understand that. But my question would be to you, Kyle, is this something, obviously we'd be setting a precedent, but would it be legal for us to do work on a private road prior to that being turned over to the village and or town roads?
If I remember correctly, they begin the dedication process.
Yeah.
Correct.
So the dedication process would take place before any improvements are done.
Correct. The tri-party agreement stipulates all of that.
That was
The
my
dedication
concern.
happened first, yeah.
Yeah. So the only other concern, and I guess this will be worked out between the town and the village with respect to the split. But that'll be discussed later.
Yeah, and I think we've had some good conversations up to this point. And I think we'll work that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jenny?
Is there a timeline for this project that we go in, right? Is that we have to, apply the grant at a certain time for this project?
This grant is done on a rolling basis. We've received every indication from ESD that we need to move very quickly, that we should apply by April 1st.
Yeah.
So this is a deadline. Now that I was just seeing that, with everything that we have going on in our town at the moment, if we can just hold off or, and then see what's, the grant and stuff like that, but apparently it's not gonna be that case, so therefore,
Again,
we gotta, yes,
Jenny, we didn't ask for this money.
I know.
They came to us, so.
But
This is
sometimes-
so critically important for the town of Webster, that property and the risk that Xerox brings, giving how quickly that business is declining and how much they contribute to our tax base, it is imperative that we work collaboratively with the village and with the state. We have this opportunity with this grant. When those roads get dedicated, then that property can be subdivided, and that brings in that opportunity to have new businesses come to Webster.
Well, I know that there's other grants out there too, they encourage from the state, at the meetings like that too and stuff. They want us to revitalize, our community, so maybe this is one of the reasons why you want to do this. To try to approach to us.
I think
Because
you're
they
exactly
saw
right,
the-
yes.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I think the state sees this as a very critical site to economic development goals of the state. And then to the point of this grant versus other grants, I don't know the crystal ball, but I don't think you'll see an opportunity like this come back again.
So
Anything of this scale or magnitude.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second, okay? I understand the state came to us and asked us to do that, and now we know the grant will probably, hopefully we'll receive the grant money. The skeptic in me worries that these grants, the dedication of these roads will go prior to, correct?
Correct.
Construction. So then the town or the village will have to be responsible for repairing those roads, regardless of us receiving the grant or not. So that's just a concern. I just want to get on the record expressing that concern.
So, concerned that if the roadways are dedicated prior to receiving the grant and maybe we don't receive the grant?
Correct.
Okay. I think it's a valid concern. The reason I would push back on it a little bit is only that, one, this resolution says that this is gonna be subject to the terms of the Xerox agreement. Two, I believe, I don't remember it exactly, but I believe the agreement stipulates that funding has to be in place in order for these dominoes to fall. And so if we didn't get the grant, I don't think there would be pressure from Xerox to start that dedication process.
Yeah, address that, because it is happening fast. My head's spinning on this. John, you bring up a great point, and you can take the mayor out of the village, or whatever, you can take John out of the mayor thing, but you can't take the mayor out of John. That concern is the villages. We're not taking any dedication of roads in this. We're building an extension of Bolter Parkway and an extension of Chiota. There's no roads there. We wouldn't even consider starting that until the grant is awarded and we knew all the development agreements and all that stuff. Now, if the village, and I'm sure the village is watching this as a prelude to, their meeting next week. So what I say is that question and concern is more for the village because they're taking existing roads, Ditchell Dean,
Right.
Panama, Orchard. And to your point, if all of a sudden the government, ESD reneged, and all of a sudden it's like, too bad, you guys now have dedication of road. Webster Village is part of our community, that would be terrible.
Who lives in the village on this
I
board?
think you might.
Anyway,
I would say that when it comes to the dedication of road, that we offer for dedication, there has to be a formal acceptance by the municipalities. They can hold off on acceptance, taking actual dedication formally until the grants.
And along those lines, I gotta tell you, and Paul is probably the person here that had the most experience on this back in April or May of last year. And I think that's what I'm about to explain is gonna happen exactly once we get awarded this $920 million. And the analogy is when we got awarded $20 million from ESD last year for the sewer plant in April. We had a meeting with them a week later. There was 9 people from ESD in the conference room, and it became very apparent that they were kind of making up the rules on this thing as they went along. And it was a negotiation, and a negotiation that was very favorable to us.
Mm-hmm.
So favorable to us that we got all $20 million by Thanksgiving. I envision that once they award this, that we will enter into those same type of details. Some of it will be how the development agreement will look and all that stuff. But others will be like, hey, this impressed account that you're reimbursing us. Like, I'd rather not go into debt for some of this work. I'd rather us take it out of our fund balance if we know that a month later we're gonna get it right back. Why would you know what I mean? So those are the devil in the details, and I already have a list of a lot of things that going into them today, I went into a couple, we'll be serving the wine before it's time. But these are things that when we get awarded, we will negotiate with them and really, for lack of better terms. Because they've almost agreed in our conversations with ESD. Well, I think that they're making it up as they go along because all of a sudden we ask them clarification questions. They're like, oh yeah, oh, we're throwing 500 grand more in. That's odd. That's odd, to say the least, right?
That's really odd.
So the other thing I would say on that is that the 500 grand, I think I let the board know that I attended a meeting with like 15 people in January, 2 months ago, at Xerox, Building 208, a bunch of much from RG&E, Xerox, the village, the town. We walked out of that meeting and I was like, wow, RG&E committed. We're gonna do a 3-month study. And we're gonna report back to all of you in 3 months, A, how long it's gonna take to bring 50 meg of power to this campus, and B, how much that's going to cost. I was like, well, that's a milestone event. I can't wait for 3 months. I had in my day plan, I can't wait till the middle of April. And then one of the the higher-ups at RG&E, who was at that meeting, sends us an email to everybody in attendance at that email a month later, in mid-February, says, we're not doing it. We're not doing it, and references NISO and that these studies cost $150,000 to $250,000, precedent-wise, they bring 10 meg. I took that person's email, that part, and I cobbled it out, and it was exactly what my supervisor's corner article was last week. As Leanne, you described, I call the roads the skeleton, I call the power the organs. And in that part of the organs, I said, this is what RG&E has told us. And I sent that article to the RG&E people. I didn't want them to get shocked. I said, this is going in the paper tomorrow. I mean, you said it to us, and it's a fact. And then 2 days later, ESD says, we're going to put 500 grand into this thing. Okay, coincidence, maybe. Whatever. Now, last two things I would say on this. I've been really happy that this is the second situation in the last 12 months that the Village of Webster leadership and the Town of Webster leadership has coalesced and been on the same page and aligned. We did that for 4 months back in December of 23 through April of 24. We were a united front as we negotiated that 3-party road agreement with Xerox. I never liked that agreement because I thought that we were the ugly redheaded stepchild. It was a sequential thing that would take literally 5 years before we were going to get the land for Boulder Park. Because sequentially, Panama, Orchard, funding, this and that. And I remember saying to the village, I said, you know what? You're not getting a gift here. This is a liability. You're getting no gift getting these roads. You got to maintain these, so you should ask for everything in the kitchen sink, and I'll support you. And so we talked, and he said, well, we've like got 6 acres that's south of it. And I said, throw it in there. I'll support that. And they did. And Xerox didn't like it. But when the negotiation was over, they got the 6 acres in that agreement. So that was a good thing for the village and town to have that kind of alignment. Kyle, Leanne, Paul, you've been at these meetings. I think there is a similar team, like we're all for one, one for all. And I think it's good and healthy for, well, I'm out of here in 9 months, but I'd like to think whoever the next supervisor is and whatever, that good karma can continue on. Because it makes, John, you were the mayor. When the village and the town leadership is working, peas and carrots, it's good for the community.
Oh, it is.
And last but not least, because I don't want to drag this on into the night, we talked about this morning, Leanne touched on it a little. We're a pass-through agent, so I have no problems with that. We're paying essentially $2,500 for that additional $500,000 to help with getting the momentum going of the organs of that campus, the power. This is just my opinion, and it probably will be some other board in years to come and some other supervisor. But there is not a shot in hell that I would ever advocate that the town government invest money on that campus to bring power to what is going to be to private industry. And as you said, John, somewhat illegal. But they figured out a way to do it, right, through this WIDA pass-through local development corporation. I don't mind the pass-through when it doesn't really cost as much, because obviously if that campus gets rebuilt, I can tell you that that would be a boom for the community's taxpayers. There's just no doubt about that, all right? Jennifer, you know that better than anybody because you work at Xerox, right? I mean, it's going to be a boom financially, it's going to be a boom morale-wise. But I, like you said, Jen, I'm going to go over record and say this, and I think you're right to say we should be, we can't spend money on that. Well, as Kyle said, they'll have the roads in their possession before the money goes out. But, I can't even imagine how much money is going to have to be spent to bring the amount of power to that campus to take 80-acre parcels and 100-acre parcels to power. I know that ESD awarded $20 million to RG&E to bring the power needed to Fairlife to that 100-acre campus. And that power is 20 meg. They're bringing 20 meg to that campus to power that plant. Okay, I don't know what industries are going to come to the Xerox campus and what type of power needs they will need. But 2 months ago, we were talking about bringing 50 meg additional power to a campus that already has around 20. So RG&E and Xerox, they came up with that number 50. I didn't come up with it, so they must have an idea that industry in the 21st century that would be attracted to those 80-acre parcels, if 3 or 4 of them get sold, they're going to need that kind of power. I can't even imagine how much that's going to cost. It costs $20 million to bring 20 meg. So, but I do know this, that ain't our bill.
No, it's not, and we'll find out what's required, but not a dollar of taxpayer money locally I will ever advocate for.
You and I we'll pick the swears on that one.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it would be legal, but it certainly makes 0 sense.
No.
So, any other questions or comments on this before we can start a regular town board meeting late, we just can't start it early, so.
Thank you very much for coming in and giving us the update tonight. I appreciate it.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
All right.